Just to chazer over quickly, so the tefillin is made up of three parts here. We have the bottom, which is the ktsitsa, which is the top square. That's the main part of the tefillin. You have the tisura, which is the bottom. That's the extra part on the bottom. And then you have the mavarta, which is the back part, which the tzuas go through. That's why it's called mavarta, because the tzuas go a maver. They go through it.
What is the name of the base?
Tisura.
Tisura?
Yeah, it's extra from Yosef. Tisura. Oh. Now it's actually made in two parts. It's folded over. There's a top and the bottom. Okay, and it's folded over and closed up. And the main part is the bottom that closes it up.
What if it isn't perfectly closed? Like mine's warped over.
Yeah, so it's not the end of the world. What they do, a lot of times they do, you'll find, is they actually put it on an extra piece of leather to sort of close it. So the tisura is folded in half, top and bottom, and because sometimes it doesn't actually get together, so we'll get to glue in a moment. Yeah, but there's an extra piece that they put in the middle, sort of to buffer it, so to go. Even though the tefillin is made in or echad, one piece of or, and we'll discuss that soon. But that's not really part of the tefillin, so they do put that in over there sometimes, and that closes it. Now, the tefillin is made out of, technically, is made out of one piece of leather. The leather is taken generally from the oirif, the back part of the neck of the animal, where it's the thickest. By the way, the oirif that I made for the parshias, the cloth that they write the parshias on, and the Torah, that's all taken from today. That's taken from a shalom. That's all taken from the a baby that's not yet born or born b'shas the shechita. They take that from there, which is very, very soft. That's what the Torah very light today. It's different. That's how they make it. That's how the tefillah are made on. It's a big business. You can imagine how many shoals there are out there, but that's how they make it. But the tefillin has some pictures there for you. So the tefillin is made.
Can you shecht it? Can you eat it after?
Your tefillin or the animal?
Okay, so it says like this. As we mentioned last week, that there's really four bottom here, as you can see. There's four separate bottoms. These are not just a line on top. These are actually four complete separate compartments. Each, that's why the Tefillen Shal Yad has one bias. It's made out of one. And the Tefillen Shal Rosh is made out of four bottom. Okay, it's four different bottom. Now, it's made, the Gemara says that Yochel Yikosve Maldal Oiros V'Yanichem Medal Batim Medal Oiros. You should make it from four different skins. Tam Loimer Zichron Beinenecha Zichron Echad. So there's a pasuk that it has to be made out of one piece of skin. Now, so how you do it is, well, Rashi says how you do it, but how you basically do it, see, there's a picture here how they did it. A little bit. Bring in a. You have a. You have a fancy. There's a better way of doing it today, but we'll see soon. There's a. Hold on, we'll get it in a moment. Here, if you notice here, let's pass this around. You take a piece of leather and they stick four fingers in, so to say, and there are four bumps in it, and then they squish it together. It's important to understand how it's made, because we're going to see in a moment. If you look, this is the old ones, how they were actually made. So if you take a look at them, you'll see this is a piece of leather until it's made into something that looks like it's filler.
Art scroll on that. Big, thick art scroll book. It's very good.
See, so that's the leather is the best way to get to see. So they take the leather and they put four things in, and they squish it together, and they square it out. So you have four compartments, but there are four separate compartments completely.
Is there any particular method of tanning the
Yeah, there is.
The hide.
There is. There
that's
actually is.
not
We're not going to get into that so much. The ibad iris. That's also a big sugya, how the ibad is done, how they tan it, because that has to be done l'shma. You have to do it l'shem mitzvahs, tefillin. And the question is, all the whole process, all three parts, or just one process, but with the ending. But
if it's in mother,
we're not going to really discuss that.
In mind.
What?
If it's in the mother, you don't have that in mind till the baby comes out.
No, to the tanning the hide.
No, we're talking
Not the shechita, the tanning we're talking about.
tanning, curing.
Now, what happens is like this. So they used to make tefillin made out of different pieces, because it's not so easy to do if you want to get a nice square piece of tefillin. So they would have different iris and they would glue it together with devek. They would glue it together, especially many of the old tefillin. The top part was one, and the bottom part was made with another piece of leather, and they were glued together. So that was a question of what has to be made from one leather. Just the four batim, but again, this is a tisura and this is the mavarta. So perhaps these parts could be made from another piece of leather as long as it's glued together. That was one question. Another question that was very prevalent is, does gluing together make it into one, actually make it considered one R? So that's another question. And this is a lot of discussion in the Achronim. A lot of discussion in the Achronim, how it's done. So, exactly. The Rosh holds that the bottom and the tisura has to be one, but he says oilam lo nagu kain, because it's very hard to make it. Today we have ways to do it. So today it's all made from one piece of leather. But we'll see it's very big nafkamina, which is very relevant today. Now, so the Sefer Tzuma says the question is, if they're sewed together, maybe that's enough to make it like one. The Bach says no, it has to be one. This is a big machlokes with Shainim. If they could be sewn together, does that make it like it's one R? Now, what about glued together? Some Sofer writes that sewed together perhaps is good, but glued together is no good. Maybe devek glued together is perhaps not, and others want to say devek is good. Now, what happens is like this. Today we make it with one. Usually, it's not such an issue. Sometimes you'll find that the bottom part, because it's hard to get it together, there's a lot of glue put into it. And that causes a big shaila in the paiskim. If it's so full of glue, perhaps we consider the glue as not kosher for tefillin. What they do is they try to make glue made out of or. They melt down the leather to make it into glue, that perhaps that should be considered part of the leather itself. What?
The leather becomes sticky.
Yeah, they make it out of leather itself. I remember there was a big tumult. A lot of the tefillin had so much devik in it. It was porous. When you open it up, it was full of glue. They wanted to possible all those tefillin, but the old tefillin were made like that. But this is one of the big issues in making tefillin back then, was that there's a lot of devik sometimes put in, a lot of glue put in.
And what is it made from, the glue?
So that's what I'm saying. So that what they would do is they would make it from the leather itself, in order that it shouldn't be another another thing in there. Now, what's relevant today mostly is a halacha like this. These are really four separate batim. Okay? Now, technically, if you'd be able to take a piece of paper, you should be able to stick it into the tefillin, into the charetz, and stick it all the way in. You're not going to be able to. Usually you won't be able to, but you should be able to stick it all the way in, and it should go down till the bottom. Because there's another question here. The other question is, how separated do the four bottom have to be? Okay? How deep down in the inside do these things go? And there's really big machlokes about that too, but we're noiheg that it should go all the way down to the bottom. It should go all the way down, and perhaps even lower than the bottom. Perhaps it should go even into the tisura, because perhaps it's not considered closed if it doesn't go all the way down. So the 4 compartments should go all the way in. Now the problem is that when you make the tefillin, when you make them, like we showed you in this picture over here, you're squishing it together, okay? Because you have a lot of folds, and when you squish it together, you get all kinds of folds in the tefillin. So what happens is naturally it pushes apart. It pushes apart. So it'll open up, and it'll actually push apart like this. It'll open up like a fan. That's how it would open. So if you leave the tefillin on its own, it's just going to keep on opening and opening. So what the soifim would do is put glue in between here, which is why you can't get anything in. They would put glue in between. That would hold it shut, and now it's not going to open. So the question is that kosher? Why not? Because perhaps by gluing it together, you're changing it from being 4 bottom to being 1. And it has to be 4 separate bottom.
If you're gluing it, you'd have to clamp it.
Yeah, I'm sure they would clamp it until it dries.
So they'd have a mold, basically.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So,
Why is it 1? You still have the walls separating them.
you still have walls in between.
Yeah.
You still have walls in between, but since they're glued together, they're not separate walls. Each one has its own tefillin. You glue it together, so it's one. It's like 1 letter in between rather than 2. So he actually speaks about it over here. More echad. Here. So it says like this. The halacha says like this. The charitz shebein bayis al bayis tzorch shigia ad atfar should go all the way down to where you sew it, which we'll learn about soon. All the way down to where you sew it. It should go all the way down to the bottom. V'mlo yigia ksheira, because we said it's a machlokes how far down it has to go. V'ushi and nicker hacharitz kadeshi dal rishnigan. So it has to be nicker. In other words, you have to see, like you could clearly see, that there are 4 compartments. If it doesn't look like 4 compartments, even if there may be 4 compartments, it's not good. It has to be nicker that there are 4 compartments. By sometimes a lot of the tefillin, they'll make it, and clamp it and glue it and make it together, and then they'll paint it over, and then you can't see any more the 4 compartments. So the sefer will take a knife and scratch out 4 lines, but not necessarily those 4 lines are where the whole where it really is. It's so packed together that you can't really find it anymore. That's no good. It has to be that the 4 bottom are nicker in itself. You can see these 4 bottom. What?
Well, from the outside?
Yes.
From the inside?
From the outside.
It happened when my son's pairs of tefillin. He hadn't checked, and that was the case.
That was the case, that the line was not in the right place, and it's puzzled. That's correct. Had to get a new pair.
Did the bottom have to be of equal width?
That's a good question. I don't think it has to be equal. I think the whole thing together has to be equal.
Right, the whole thing has to be a square.
Yeah. If it's a drop off, it's not the end of the world. Now, so it has to be nicker hacharetz. This is my grandfather went to Israel and bought a pair of tefillin, and then they have to wear it. You got to check the tefillins because they're a dime a dozen, and unless you know who did it and how they did it, it's very likely that they're not done properly. Because to do it properly, you're going to pay more than if you don't do it properly. So it has to be clear that that's it. So now the shaila comes like this. So Mishabur writes, "I will sweet rishim bam loy mahani klaus." What we just mentioned. If you just make a line, it doesn't help. You have to have a separation between abatim shiu charitzim nikorim mamish. So I'm saying they stick it together. But tochen is called a bayis betich, and then they cover it by beglonitz. They paint it right. Then they make a line that doesn't work. Lechatchila has to go all the way down to the bottom. Okay. Now, so the question is, what happens when what they would do is they would actually glue it together so it wouldn't open up. because naturally, like we said, it's squished together to such a degree, the pressure is going to open it like this. So the Bi Halacha says over here, even if you... So the question is the devik cup. So here it's the opposite. If you hold that when you make the tefillin straight away, you're allowed to use devik to attach it together, so that was still considered ar echad. So in other words, you can use different pieces of leather and glue them together, and they were considered one. So that kula will be a problem over here, because if you put glue in between, then it's one. If you hold the other way, that glue does not make it to one ar, so then you could argue, who cares is glue in between? That's not making it into one, and therefore it would be kosher if it's together. So those that want to be makel and use the glue to make your tefillin, the components of the tefillin to make it, then you can't use the devik to close it together. But if you hold that the devik does not make it one, so then perhaps you can use the devik to keep it together.
But how could you have bricks with
It's
cement?
some cipher writes.
It's not one brick. You have bricks in between the cement. It's not one brick.
It's not a brick. This is a pair of tefillin.
Okay, I'm saying analogy, the same thing.
And that's the question.
It doesn't join there and make them one brick.
So if it can make it one R, if the devik can make it one R, that you can make your tefillin with it, attach your whole tefillin together with the devik, so then you're considering it one. If you consider it one, then this should also be one. Some say go so far to say, well, it depends. If the tefillin was made out of one R, then perhaps you could put the devik in. But if it was made out of two and you glued it together, then you can't put the devik in. You can't put the glue in. Now the Bi Halacha brings down that now the Chayonim said no, perhaps b'diavad, even if it was made out of glue your tefillin, you could still put glue in between, because you don't have kavanah that it should be really considered one, yeah. But nonetheless, even if you do it, it should be done at the bottom. The glue should be put on the bottom part, so at least the yoytze the shitas, as long as some of it is separated, that would be good enough. Now today they started being much more machmer on this because of this issue, and they make it. I actually had my tefillin checked for this to see if it is, and the sofer was able to put a piece of paper down to the bottom, which I can't seem to do, but he showed me he put it in. But the reason why, because when you paint it, the paint gets into the cracks, so that stops the paper from going down. But if you have a good razor, you could actually cut into, if there's no glue in there, you could actually cut a very thin razor, you could actually cut it into the bottom. I wouldn't try it myself if you're not a sofer, you don't want to ruin your tefillin. But you could actually get all the way in. So they try to make the tefillin, and it's actually interesting how they do it. You see, the old tefillin were made like these pictures over here, where they made 4 holes in it, and then they scrunched it together. So that actually causes it to open up. Another problem is when they make the mavart in the back, because it's so wide, they don't need such a wide mavart. They squish together just the bottom, but the front of the tefillin they squish together, but then the back they don't need to squish it together. They only need a little bit, so they actually only use the 2 middle ones, and they cut away from the side ones. They use the 2 middle ones, it opens up, and then it goes over the bottom. So the tisura is made from the 2 middle ones. That's how the old tefillin are made. But now they had a shtick to do where they actually stretch it. They don't make so far away the holes. They actually make them lechatchila very close together. Just have a picture of it. They make it very close together.
Is there any?
And there's another picture. And that causes that it doesn't have to fold so much. And once it doesn't have to fold so much, it's unlikely that it's going to open up as fast. And they also do it with some pressure, that's an inward pressure. They have different ways of doing it, that it should be able to stay together without having to put glue in the inside, and then you avoid this whole shaila.
And a lot.
You have to check tefillin, or only if it's in a wet or sunny place?
Only if it's in the west side. We're going to get to that, yeah.
Otherwise, you never.
Yeah, but
have
I don't want to get
check.
off the topic. We're going to get to that, yeah. So Hagam, most tefillin, especially older tefillin, are made with glue. It's kosher as long as the glue's not in the whole thing. The glue's just in the bottom part. So again, when you buy a pair of tefillin, you never know what you're getting. So you have to be careful to buy it from someone that knows what he's doing and
What
knows
is the
what to look
glue?
for and how to get it. What?
What is the glue made from?
That's what I'm saying. They make it today from the leather.
And when you say
This glue is probably not made from the leather.
Usually
It's
glue
glue
is
and
made from animal bones.
Yeah, yeah.
when you say older Tefillen, are you saying 20 years, 50 years? What's older?
Yeah.
Like how far back?
20 years already. Yeah. This is a newer thing that they're working out a way to do it. Not all the tefillin had to have it. It depends who made it. There's different methods, but it depends how much is put in. Also, I remember when I was bar mitzvah, back then. So my grandfather, of course, picked up a pair of tefillin and he had it around. So my father took it to a cipher. And as he was opening it up, he said he wouldn't touch these tefillin. You know what I mean? My grandfather didn't know. He wanted to buy it for the grandchildren. So he walked into a store and he bought tefillin. He opened it up and first we couldn't figure out how to open it because they didn't open it in the right spot. And then he finally got it open. I remember I was a child. I watched him do it. When Rabbi Ribi had to, and I buy tefillin for my children, so I take them there, and he shows them how it's made, and he puts it together, and you get a picture of what it is. And he sews it together for them. So it gives you a little bit of the chashivas inyan. But this is something that's more recently they became much more aware of. But that's the devik. But la halacha, hagam, that people are very machmir. But it could be this big machlokes if the devik is actually kosher, the tefillin that's made. But at least on the bottom, on the tisura, the way they do it is they put just a little bit to glue it shut. In other words, when they close it, they sew it. We'll talk about the sewing with the gidim. They sew it shut. But afraid that it's going to pop open, it's not going to hold. They do put a little glue on. And they try to use it from the tefillin itself. Now, let me see. We'll cover that before we move on to the next thing. Okay, this is not so important for us to learn about now. So the parashiyos are actually put into each one. Shema v'yim shema kadosh v'yikviyachad are put in. Okay, and in the inside it sort of looks like this. You know, you have the different bottom and the parshas are sticking in. And we try to be machmir that it shouldn't be sticking out on the bottom. They should go into the pocket.
And what are they written on?
Parchment on cloth.
Like, or animal skin?
Yeah.
Well, that's
We're going to learn about how you make that soon. Now, they're sewed together, which we discussed last week. Sewed together with the gid, with the sinews, right? And it's made, basically most of them are done like we have here, 4 on each side, 4 holes on each side. They're sewed together, and we said the ribuah, the square has to be exactly equal. Now, if you'll notice, some tefillin are more noticeable. There's also holes on the bottom. There's a gid that goes through, between each one of these bottom, there is a gid that goes in the bottom through that way. And some of the tefillin you didn't have them showing on the bottom; they would come through on the bottom. Most tefillin are done on the inside; they go through the tisur rather than the bottom. But it goes that way; they have through.
On the bottom of yours, is that glue we see?
No, this is just from the schwitz.
No, I meant is the bottom like made flat with the glue, or is that?
No. This is just from years of sweat that it turns this color.
What is the material? It's leather.
It's leather, yeah.
That was the question.
So okay, so it's actually sewn together. See if you guys a picture. They sew each parsha they wrap with a hair, with a sail, with the hair of the egel, and it goes through. Now, one other thing you have on the bottom of the shalrosh is you have a shin, as you can see. There's one shin with 3 and one shin with 4. Okay. Now, the shin also has to be done. The whole tefillin has to be done l'shma. Okay, and it has to be done by avodas yad. You have to do it. So, how you make the shin is quite difficult actually, because if you get a form, the question is, if you get a form and you make it with a form, is that chak tuches? What's chak tuches? And we'll learn about this when you write. The shin has to be like when you write, has din ksiva when you write. Now when you write on torah, or you write a tefillin, so you write from the ink, you write onto the parchment. But if you would actually put a blotch of ink there and just scrape out around, so to say, to make the shape of the letter, that's called chak-tuchais. You're engraving the letters by scraping around, and you're left with the letter. So when you use a form, so there are actually two ways to do it. You could go from behind and push it out. Perhaps that's good, because you're pushing out the letter. Or you could go from the top and push in on the outside. That would be chak-tuchais, because there you're pushing the outside in, and the rest is being left out, and that would be not a kosher ksiva.
So that would be indented.
No, because you indent the outside, and what's left is in the inside is left. You indent around like a stamp.
Glass relief type of thing, where you carve out the part you don't want.
Right, you push in the outside, and the inside letter remains. So what they actually do in the tefillin is that they make it with a form, and then they paint it, and then they flatten it out until it's flat and you can't see it anymore. And then they take a tweezers and pull out the letter. And then they fix it up again with the form. They figure out ways to do it that it should look nice, but the idea is it has to be pulled out with your hand, so that it's a ksiva that's made with your hand. Okay, this we'll leave for the siphon. I'd like to get into things which is more negay for us, as consumers. What size is the tefillin?
Good question.
How big are the tefillin? So, kohen kol is a machlokes if there is a size. Is there a size for the tefillin at all? That's the question number one. So the Mechaber paskins that there's no shear. The size of the bottom ain't no shear, has no shear. Has no shear. Now there's really three shittas. Mishmur says Nacham Lacha Shediv HaGoinim Shatchilu Asosim Ktalamets Ba'ayim Alatz Ba'ayim. So the Shemusha Rabbah says it should be 2 etzbas by 2 etzbas. Okay, a square, which is about shows how big an etzbah is, but you're talking about 4 or 5 centimeters. Okay, so which is for 5 centimeters is almost a little less than 2 inches. Okay, a little less than 2 inches. I'm an American, I still work with inches, but if you work with centimeters, so then it's between 4 and 5 centimeters. Okay, now that's the smallest it should be. That's the Shemusha Rabbah. Now what's the basis of this? The basis of this is like this. The Gemara says that there's a place, and then it's important to understand, there's a place on the Shal Rosh to hold 2 pairs of tefillin. Now according to most sheets, the 2 pairs of tefillin means one behind the others. One on top of it. So it's 2 pairs ba'orech this way. Now we'll get to that, what exactly that shear is. So there's a place to have 2 pairs of tefillin. Now the Kohen Gadol, what?
Rashi and Rav Tam at the same
Yeah, some people wear 2. The Iranians wear 2 at once. Rashi will wear the top. Yeah, we'll talk about that. So there's a place to wear 2 pairs of tefillin. Now, the tzitz, the Kohen Gadol would wear tzitz. And the Gemara says that in between the tzitz and the mitznafis and the hat he wore, there was a place for him to put on tefillin. There was a makom to put on tefillin. Now the tzitz was 2 etzba'im, was 2 etzbas wide. So the Shemush Rabbah seems to understand the question where he wore the tzitz, on his forehead or where we wore the tefillin. So he seems to understand the Kohen Gadol wore the tzitz where he wore the tefillin, and has still left another space for the tefillin Shal Rosh. So the cheshbon he makes is that the tzitz took up the place of 1 pair of tefillin, which was 2 etzba'is, and the other pair of tefillin could fit into the other spot. Now the problem is, what's the tefillin? If the tefillin is with the, you got to put on with the tisura and with the mavarta even, so that's pretty small. 2 etzba'is is a pretty small pair of tefillin. I mean, if you're just talking about the top, it's not so far off. Okay, this is about 2.5 etzba'is. But if it's if you're talking about the whole tefillin, you're gonna have a very hard time getting 2 pairs of tefillin in that spot. So there are shittas that hold, the whole pair of tefillin is 2 etzba'is, which means this part may be an etzbah and a half or something, or 1 etzbah. The Bible, the point is going to say it shouldn't be less than 1 etzba for sure. But today we don't. You don't make. I mean, most of them are made. At least this part should be 2 etzbais. But these are different sheets. So the Mishabur brings down. Behind imat tisura, it shouldn't be less than. It doesn't say with the mavarta, but with the tisura, which is this part, it shouldn't be less than 2 etzbais.
I mean, practically speaking, are they able to make them that small? Like that's
There's another problem. If you're wearing 2 pairs of tefillin back to back, and you have mavarta.
Right, so that's you have a problem. How do you fit it in?
Yeah.
That's one of the rayas, yeah. So Mishabur comes out, even though you can make tefillin this small, like you're saying, should make it at least 2 etzbayim, because if you make small tefillin, the parshas have to be very tiny, and unless you have a real mumcha writing it, it's going to be very hard to make them kosher when they're very small. The letters could start touching each other, the letters could be written out properly. The smaller you write, that's why, by the way, not every sefer writes for tefillin, because you can write a sefer Torah, you can write a mezuzah, but you have to write tefillin. The parshas are quite small. So even a large pair of tefillin, the parshas are small. So you have to be the special tefillin writers. They write just tefillin because they're used to writing very small, and they write it that it should look nice. So that's you have to be very careful that it should be kosher, because if you try to make it too small, it's not kosher. The problem goes the other way around. If the Chazal say there's a mokim in the Scheiner Rosh to put 2 pairs of tefillin and not more, and we'll see there's a problem with the shayat also. So if our tefillin is 4 etzbais already, now you got a very big problem. You're going to put it on your head, okay? And if it's a little moved to the side, a little moved down, a little moved up, you're not yotzei. Because a person has to be careful that the tefillin is in the right spot. If the tefillin is not in the right spot, it's like you're wearing it on your wherever. You're not wearing it, or you're wearing it on your nose. You're not yotzei tefillin. Right? It has to be in the right spot. So if we say, don't worry so much, there's a place in the Rosh for 2 pairs of tefillin, and you're only putting on 1 pair of tefillin, so if worse comes to worse, it's slightly off, you're still yotzei, because you're putting it in the right spot. But if you say, 1 second, the share of tefillin is only 2 etzbais, so there's only 4 etzbais spot in your head to put on your tefillin, you got a real problem putting on tefillin today, that it should be in the right spot. And for this reason, it's very recommended. It's very not recommended to buy a large pair of tefillin, especially for a small bar mitzvah boy. As we'll see, it will come out impossible for him to get the tefillin on his arm, and forget about it on his head. It'll be impossible. It'll be way too big. Get these huge pairs of tefillin. People are today. Everybody's going smaller. Everybody's going smaller. The tefillins are getting smaller, because this way you have more of a chance of being yotzei to pair of tefillin. That's the being yotzei, getting into the right spot. What is the spot? At the end of the day, what is the spot? Where should it go on that it should be good? So it has to start from where the hairline begins, not where the hair falls down, but where the hairline begins. Now, what? Well, used to be, yeah, it used to be. Where the hairline begins by most people. So I got by him, he may not have a hairline, but that's where it begins, that's where it starts.
You put different tefillin if you're bald.
What?
You put
Well, it used to be. The guy was born like that. So that's where it starts. And how far up does it go? So the Mishabur writes, the halacha says till the place where it's soft by the child's head. Go figure where that is. So yeah, okay, there you go. You could measure it, but the halacha says like this. The halacha says that it's a machlokes rishonim actually what that means, and most rishonim holds it goes until the goiva harosh, until the height of the head. So according to those rishonim, you have a bit of space. It goes until the height of the head. The Rambam holds it's halfway up only. So the bigger head, you have a bigger space. If you're a smaller head, you have a smaller space. But according to the Rambam, it's not going to be all the way up to the top. It'll only be up to halfway. So Mishabur writes over in Simchav Zayin to be halacha.
The soft spot in the middle of the head.
Let me just read it for you.
Baby's head.
Yeah.
Your soft spot is
So
low.
you can tell if it's meningitis, if it's raised. Right, doctor?
One of the signs.
it goes halfway up. Goes halfway up. So it is over here. Goes halfway up. So that's the and Mikra one should be machmir to try to get it like the Rambam Shita, which is only to half, but yeah, but it goes a little higher up. You could be saimach on the other Shitas that you're yoitze. But again, again, but the shaila is, so there was a whole shaila, Divei Chaim, the sons of Rav. Okay, so he was very annoyed that people would look at the mirrors to see where the tefillin was. Very annoyed, and so he says, "What are people getting so excited about? There's a place on the head for 2 pairs of tefillin, so just stick it on and don't look in the mirror, because you're being machmir to look in the mirror to see where it is, and you're being over on the issue of lo yilbash that a man is wearing a woman's clothing. You're not supposed to look in the mirror. You're supposed to look in the mirror."
What is that? That men use mirrors.
I don't know.
Is to keep it in the center.
Besides that, besides the loyal bush, he doesn't like it to stam. It's a mirrors.
Isn't that to keep it in the center of the head?
The kier was made out of mirrors from the women, but be'etzem it doesn't belong in base medrash mirrors and this and that. Forget about it. He said that once all the years people put on tefillin and then that's it. They were yoitze. They didn't start looking around for mirrors. What?
No, I was thinking you got to keep it into the center.
Oh, very good. So the problem is, you're saying is good. So the problem is that okay, there's a place for two tefillin. We said one behind the other.
Right.
But the problem is, if it's off-center, there's only place for one tefillin.
Right.
So this is a big kasha they ask on the Divei Chaim. Why is he saying to be so makel and just put it on and just figure it out and hope for the best? It says Lamaisa, that's only when it's one, if how high up it is.
Right.
But on the side next to each other, this doesn't work. So Bekitzer,
I'll call you up in 2 weeks and ask you about the screw.
here. So this is a shver shayl, but I'll put him. We never saw in the old days people use mirrors. So a person could be, but it does say in halacha that a person should be medactic. So there you go, the list between the litfishes and the chassidim.
Lots of things we didn't use.
It says over here.
It improves it. Why can't you improve things? We didn't have computers 200 years ago to look up svarim. So
Right.
you don't use it because we didn't do it then.
Here, Moka Manoch Tefillen Shel Rosh was Ikrei Asar Metzleit Soif Moka Manoch. So Chavan Aktzitzu Shebe'emtzim Kesher. The person has to be mechavan that it should be put on right. So that's the debate. The debate is, do we look for the people come with little things to make sure it's on right? One thing for sure, a person, when he gets a new pair of tefillin or he gets his ritzuos to be done, the person should, the first few times when he's putting it on, take a check to make sure it's done right, or ask a guy next to him to make sure it's on right, until you get used to where it's supposed to feel on your head. Once you're used to it, so then you put it on, you basically have the feel. But until then, when you have a new pair, or when you have a new pair with ritzuos, sometimes they're not done the same, they're not tied exactly the same spot, so the feel is a little off, and you need to adjust to how the tefillin is going to fit on you.
So if they're not in the back, does it have to fall in a certain...
Yeah, so they're not in the back. They're not in the back. Supposed to go at the end of the gulgulus, at the end of the skull. Now you have a little hole there, on the back. So your skull ends. It should be. That's not exactly where it should be, but l'chatchila should be at mamish towards the end of the skull as it's going down.
There's a little bump in the back of the skull you can feel.
Yeah, you can feel a little bump in the back.
Just underneath there.
Yeah.
It goes under that, or...
Just underneath that bump.
It goes
No, but
under
on the skull itself. It should be on the skull,
Groove.
The bump-
not on the neck.
The bump is above the end of the skull.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
The skull goes in a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the last part.
Right underneath this point here, right underneath there, you're on the skull.
Now, even though some people a lot of times put a little lower, okay, but the evidence not the end of the world as long as it's not on the neck itself. It should be higher up than the neck. Especially if there's no hair there, then it's for sure a problem. But usually you still got a place where there's hair. But it should be a little higher up, and therefore it should be made smaller than you're used to, because it should lie tighter on it, and the knot shouldn't be so low down. And you don't want your tefillin to be too low down, because if it hangs below the hairline, you're not yotze. It has to be above the hairline, and then hopefully you still have enough room on top that it fits. But if it's below the hairline, it's for sure off the map. And even the tisura can't be below, as I stated in the Mishnah. Even the tisura in this part, not just the box itself. Even the tisura cannot be below the thing. So as you daven, it slides down. But at least when you put it on, make sure you yotze to put it back up, and it should be wrapped tight. But that's the debate. I know a lot of the Lubavitcher tefillins are very large. I don't understand why they do that. It's very difficult for a young child, for sure, to be yotze with it.
Sofas can't ride small.
I think it's smaller.
That's why they're so big.
Perhaps because it says, the tefillin of Rabbi Tam should be smaller than the tefillin of the Rashi, so they make the Rashi bigger, and I don't know why they do it. But upon him, it definitely causes an issue for the wearing of the tefillin. Now on the shalyad also, the place to wear the tefillin is after the elbow, obviously, and before here, but it goes from where the muscle begins. The muscle begins b'derech klal 2 etzbais beyond the crevice here. So you put your finger 2 etzbais, and that's where you feel it starts going up. Or the tapuach, where it starts going up, is usually 2 etzbais after it depends on the size of the person, but it's usually 2 etzbais. So the tefillin should not go below that. Now, when you have now there's a machlokes how high up it could go. According to the Machaber and Ramah, it can only go halfway between the elbow and the shoulder. It can only go halfway. It can only go halfway up. That could be very difficult again if you have a larger pair of tefillin, especially when you move your arm around. It'll slide up or down. It'll usually slide down, and then you're not going to be yotze. So you have to put a little higher up. The Goyen holds you can be yotze even on the upper part of your hand. So the Bialach brings it's kedai, or the smaller child, but by mitzvah they should put it higher up, and at least his yotze according to the Goyen.
Can you put it on
the Goyen rather than it goes lower and you're not yotze according to anybody.
If it's smaller, let's say smaller, can you put it towards the outside, or
no,
has to be?
It should be towards the inside.
No, it's just trying to
facing
think
towards
of
the
a
leg.
remedy.
Yeah, and it should be put better higher up rather than lower down. Because lower down, it could be you're not yotze. Higher up, you'll be at least yotze. More than a person that, for medical reason, can't put it lower down. So Samech on the Goyen sheet, then you can put it higher up, and they can put it on the upper part of his arm. But again, when you have the larger tefillin, and you have a small arm, it's very difficult to get the tefillin on that it's actually in the right spot. So you got to remember, the sheer tefillin was 2 etzbais by 2 etzbais. Our tefillin are a lot larger than that. So you have to work it out that it should actually fit in. Now, on the tefillin shalyad, what time is that? Just make sure it goes. Oh yeah. This ends with this. On the tefillin shalyad is made with one bias, right? So it has only one box. That's very clear. It doesn't have 4. Okay. Now we have the ritzuos that go in. This is the yud. Okay. On your tefillin you have a shin up here. Okay. You have a shin. There's different minhagim how to make the knot in the back, but some have either a dalid. There are actually 3 ways to make it: a dalid, or what we call a kashrut-kosher, which is a box. And then there's some have a masori to make like 2 yuds, sanzas and others. But basically, there's a shin and a dalid, and then there's a yud. On the kasher shel tefillin, you make a yud. Now, it goes through the mavarta, and it gets stuck in. Al pi Zohar, the Mechaber brings it down that you Zohar that the yud should be leaning against should be touching the. It should be. It says it should be bizarre that the yud should be touching the tefillin. Now, hagam that could be meikar din yoytzei. Rav Nezer says the fact that it touches the bottom. Who says it touches where it's attached? It touches. Who said it has to touch over here? So, but this part is attached. That's enough. And one could be saimach on that. A lot of the old tefillins are hard to get it together, and Rav Nezer says that that's sufficient. But l'maisa it says yizar, so people try to be machmer. So they now when you wear a nusach svar tefillin like I have here, so you're always pulling it this way because there's two ways to tie your tefillin, outwards or inwards. So nusach svar tefillin has the loop on the outside. Because the shiloh, should the loop be on the outside or should the loop be on the inside neged alev? Because that's where the kesher is. So the nusach, call it the nusach svar tefillin, have the loop on the outside. The nusach ashkenaz tefillin have the loop on the inside. If you have the loop on the inside, you can imagine every time you tighten your tefillin, you're pulling the yud away. If you have the loop on the outside, every time you tighten your tefillin, you're pulling it in. So on the nusach svar tefillin, you don't have a problem. This is going to stay. Usually it will stay. But on the nusach ashkenaz tefillin, every time you pull it, you're pulling it out, you're pulling it out. This thing is going to get loose. So what they used to have was they used to tie a gid, if you notice, they tie a string around. So you can't tie it underneath because that would be a hefsek. So they started tying it around the box. And then others say, well, you shouldn't have it. They tie it inside. Others put a piece of leather in here to make it tight. But this is an issue that they try to get around. There are those that actually, when they put on their tefillin, they actually tie one. They put the strap around al pi Kabbalah. By Ashkenazim, we don't do this at all. But by some of the Sfardim, al pi Kabbalah, they put the strap around. That actually helps to hold it down.
You've seen that.
You've seen that. But in Ashkenazim, we never do that. We have not to do that. But this is an issue, keeping the yud attached. It should be attached. You see, that's why this has a break in it, so it should allow the yud to stay attached to it. But one should be makbid. You could pull this very tight in. You get a cipher to stick something in to wedge it. That it should be. I think the newer tefillins, they're much more aware of this, and they try to do it in a way that this can't slip out. And once it can't slip out, you hope that this part will also stay on. But again, if a person daven, then he realizes his yud is hanging out, so he's not mechuyev to put on his tefillin again, because according to, it doesn't say that it's ma'akif. It just says al pi zayir. One has to be very careful to put that on. So that's the basic rundown of at least the bottom. The basic rundown of the bottom. We'll still talk about the paint and the ritzuas. We'll get to the paint and the ritzuas and on the bottom, and we'll get a little bit into the parshias, and then more onto that, some halachas of wearing tefillin in future weeks.
It's good.